by putting these in place, it's like the intuitive hits, the messages are flowing in an even easier way than before. It's ironic really that it takes being ill to actually implement those strategies.
Join me to discuss some magical lessons I've learnt from my chronic illnesses.
Okay, hi everyone. I don't think I've ever been in such a comfortable kind of setting before for any of my videos. I will just explain why. Yeah, I'm definitely in the middle of a flare-up and it's been a tough time, basically kind of caused by getting a cold from my daughter, bringing a delightful cold home from school. And yeah, like I've been recovering for about a week. Come. We went out today to a National Trust place and, you know, I did want to film a little bit. I've been filming for the autumn equinox, so I'm really feeling those vibes and enjoying those vibes. And I wanted to be able to film a bit more today, but it's just not happening. But because I still had makeup on, I thought I could get into my pyjamas. What I did then think is that I do have some takeaways that I would like to talk about with regards to chronic illness and witchcraft and magical practice, and I thought that maybe I could talk about those in a video now in this kind of way, you know, making those adjustments for myself so that I can actually do the things I want to do but with variation on the ways I used to do them. So I got into my PJs as I would normally, but instead of taking my makeup off when I had my shower, which is what I would normally do, I thought I'll leave it on. I can do this video in the makeup I was wearing today and then take it off afterwards, and that way I've, you know, been able to do my video. So that's just a little bit of the realness behind this video and the why it looks the way it is, and that maybe, you know, you might be getting a few more like this from me in upcoming weeks, months. In the past few years, you know, when I've had flare-ups, there have been things that I've wanted to say. You know, what I've ended up doing is recording voiceovers for videos, or I did start recording a podcast actually, that then I've just not had the time to actually produce any of the art or any, like, sort out anything to actually create that podcast. And if I do end up doing a podcast, I want to be able to produce it so that it can be, you know, broadcast on other platforms as well as YouTube. And I know that, you know, when I've done voiceover style content before with sort of a plain background, they don't normally tend to do that well anyway, but I would like, if I'm going to do a podcast style production, that it actually does get at least put up on other channels. And, you know, it's apt to talk about it now because the topic was around chronic illnesses and witchcraft. So yeah, witching with chronic illnesses, disabilities, and, you know, things like depression, anxiety, all of those things, Spoonie witches basically, is the topic and the ongoing theme. So yeah, maybe there will be space for me to do that, and there are more things that are coming into fruition for me this autumn that I'm excited about. Some that is going to require considerable energy, and other things that is going to require some energy from me. I'm not sure how that's going to look yet, but I am excited. And as I said, I'm absolutely adoring the vibes at the moment, the autumnal vibes. I've been fiction reading, which is something I love to do in the colder months. I just love to cuddle up with a good book. I'm currently reading One Dark Window, so about halfway through. This is Rachel Gillig, An Enchanting Tale with Sharp Claws and Teeth. So this is a 1 million copy best-selling series. This book is about a fairy tale kingdom called Blunder, and there is a sort of magical mist that surrounds the woodlands and the castles there, and it makes people sick essentially, and with the sickness comes some magic that people don't fully understand, and there's a system for trying to control the magic with these cards. There are a certain number of cards available, more of certain cards than of others, and essentially certain people like to collect these cards and they have power. Our protagonist Elspeth does have some magical power within her, in that she has an ancient kind of nightmare trapped in her mind, and that has come through getting sick. And essentially then she ends up on this path where she's put into a quest with some of the powerful people in the kingdom to find the cards to save someone's life, but it's sort of going up against the king. The stakes are really high. It's quite exciting. There's fantasy, there's romance, there's horror, an evocative tale of romance, mystery and alluring monsters, says Lindell Clipstone, author of Lake's Edge. Davina Evans of A Notorious Sorcerer writes, a beautifully dark fairy tale of blood, rage and bitter choice that whisked me away to mist-wreathed woods ripe with romance and menace. The Shepherd King, duology. I'm enjoying it. This is what I'm currently reading. I'm also listening to a different book on Audible. It was in the sale, and so I thought I would pick it up. And so this is A Crimson Moth, and I'm on chapter 8. It says, a moth to flame, a witch to burn. It's different, but similar in its sort of fantasy, kind of dark, gothic edge. Fantasy fairy tale. I've also been absorbing myself in art and things, and a lot of these things I was going to share in the autumn equinox video actually. Maybe I'll just start talking about what I wanted to talk about originally, and really that is around the chronic illnesses. I've made a few other videos about, you know, self-care and as a magical practitioner and as a witch. I've also made videos about toolkit for dark times, and I'll link some of the videos that could be helpful below. I've talked about my chronic illness before. So I was diagnosed last year with fibromyalgia, and this year was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I was actually surprised that then I got the second diagnosis, because I thought, well, chronic fatigue syndrome is part of the fibromyalgia. So, but yeah, essentially I have two different diagnoses now. And yeah, they do cross over, and you can learn things to support one that will also ultimately probably support you with the other one. This year I have been speaking to pain therapists and chronic fatigue therapists as well, and getting support throughout, which has been really good. I've just started, I think I've done 2 weeks, an online group every week for supporting with chronic fatigue. So it's a lot of people in my area anyway are on this course, and it's really, really good. And I mean, of course, a lot of these people aren't, not that I know of, they're not magical practitioners at all, but you know, it got me thinking about, hubby just brought me a pumpkin spice chai from Tea Pigs, which is really nice, and I've got it in a new pumpkin mug, which is nice as well. Taking this course, it got me thinking about some of the ways in which, when you are suffering from something like a chronic illness, I suppose it's a bit like when you get the flu or something, as, you know, a healthy person, and how it knocks you down, and how you're kind of then, you're sort of forced to slow down, you know. And I used to be that person that would be like, oh my gosh, like life just won't slow down, and sort of like kind of wishing for a cold or a flu to knock me down, and then it would, and then I still would struggle to slow down, but then I'd have to, because I'd be then forced to bed or whatever and finding it. So like, oh, it's a bit like that when you're just like, oh gosh, like this is, yeah, my body just is now forced to slow down. And it's a bit like that in that way that it reminds you of the good things that you really, I hate shitting on myself, but should be doing for yourself, to look after yourself. And it's a great thing to practice self-care all year round, but September is just a really nice month for it anyway, being equinox. And also just a time when we're sort of starting to reflect and go inwards and spend a little bit more time, you know, reassessing what we're doing and what we're taking part in, and how much energy things are taking from us, and how much energy we want to give to things, and what we no longer have energy for, what's not ours to carry, and, you know, what we're not gonna actually expend energy on anymore, or not gonna worry ourselves with, or what we're gonna say no to, or what we're gonna put boundaries up for around. And I think, you know, it's really key for that. But I think like this, taking this course, it's a lot of it seems very like, you know, you should know that, but a lot of it, it's like medicine, learning it. So it's very easy, of course, to tell someone who's unwell to rest, but it's actually much harder to sort of quantify that for the person, and for the person to actually be like, okay, no, I need to actually rest. So I think in some previous videos that I filmed, I did share about the book Chronically Magical, which has been a beautiful book. So I would definitely recommend that. This is a book that I was sent for self-management handbook for ME CFS, and it was also for post fatigue, which I know a lot of people suffer with. So this is from the Royal Devon University Healthcare, and essentially what it is, it's got extracts from the book Fighting Fatigue by Sue Pemberton and Catherine Berry. So obviously this has come from my NHS area in Devon, but if you wanted to get the book Fighting Fatigue by Sue Pemberton and Catherine Berry, then a lot of the same theories would be within. And essentially it goes through, you know, section by section, and I've only read a few of these so far because we're going through it as a group. And so the fundamentals of fatigue management, breaking down what CFS is and how it impacts the body. And then a really helpful analogy was thinking of your body as being like a human battery. And this definitely resonates, I think, for a lot of Spoonie people, that, you know, you wake up in the morning after 8 or 9 or even 10, 11 hours sleep and you still feel like you're absolutely exhausted. And then how when you push yourself and you just then hit a wall, instead establishing breaking distances. So by breaking things into smaller activities, setting time limits, delegating, of course, and noticing the warning signs that you get. So for many people, these will all be different. So taking note of what these are for you, and then having like pillars of rest in between. So, you know, typically for me, I would have like one chunk of meditation time either in the morning or the afternoon. My life was really busy at one point. It was at night time. And instead, what I'm having to do now is implement a lot of much smaller chunks of meditative breathing and meditation activities and rest throughout the day. I've been completing activity diaries to, you know, document in colour like my activities, you know, learning more about what is going to be supportive for me and what is not. Thinking of like activities as either high or low in terms of energy expenditure. And actually the low energy expenditure activities might be something like reading or watching TV, but really the rest is either like meditation guided or, you know, just with music, breath work, listening to the birds, listening to the trees, closing your eyes in the garden, closing your eyes on your bed, stroking your animal, closing your eyes. It's really just meditative breath work and coming back to center. And that's something that as witches, we know we kind of, again, should do, or we know, I know some people don't like to meditate as practitioners, but I do feel that my psychic abilities, my magical powers are energized by doing these kinds of practices, but also I'm able to tap in to my senses and to my intuition and to my psychic strengths when I'm more attuned with my body and when I'm more practiced in meditation in those phases of my life. Really now, like, I've had to prescribe, and they do talk about that, the idea of like prescribing rest to yourself as like a medicine. And so beyond just wanting to do a meditation or a journey to connect to a deity that I'm working with, or to do work in the astral, or to, you know, prepare to do some dream incubation, like dream work. More than that, I literally have had to plug in and prescribe myself 10 minutes of rest here with a cup of tea and the dog and silence. So nothing on my phone playing, nothing, you know, unless it's like plinky plonky music, meditative music. And also things like yoga nidra are amazing as well, I'll say that, and then any meditations and things. But like then planning them in, like some chunks are 10 minutes, some might be 20, and then maybe a longer yoga nidra session, a meditation session. And sometimes I will fall asleep, and that's okay. Sometimes they have just been yoga nidra, deep breath work, deep restorative yoga nidra. Sometimes that yoga nidra has turned into other things like journey work and seeing beings, spirits, deities I work with, receiving messages. Sometimes it has not turned into that. Sometimes it's been sleep. And I've not really felt the need to have lots of messages, but messages have come through as they always do anyway. So it's not like this kind of rest that I'm prescribing is replacing or in any way changing what I'm doing. In fact, and this is why I thought this video might be useful, is because it's actually really helping. And it's again, it's like that catch-22 that like, it's like when you're ill and you're like, oh, actually, like my body does need this rest, and now I have to rest, and actually I need it. The catch-22, of course, being that like when we're healthy, that's almost the more dangerous time, because, well, when we're healthy or when we feel healthy, that could be more dangerous, because then we can push ourselves. And sometimes I think, you know, you do, especially with magical work, sometimes you can have energy from other places. And of course, like grounding, centering, those practices do help us to draw energies from the earth, draw energies from above. And those things are fabulous, but sometimes they can lull you into a kind of false sense of like, oh, okay, I have energy to do this now, or to do that. And sometimes it can just be adrenaline from a practice if it's been intense. And so I've really had to be careful with myself. And I've been using an app called Visible for a while now, I think a year and a half or so. It gives you a measurement for the day as to where you are, and when I'm rock bottom, I usually feel rock bottom, but sometimes I'll still feel really bad and get a 3 or a 4, which is, you know, much better. But I can find that deceptive, because often on those days I'm actually not okay, and by the afternoon I will be completely flagging. And so having a reading that tells me I'm a 4 out of 5, which you've got to think is quite good, really what it's measuring is your heart rate and temperature changes in your skin. And, you know, it can be a really good gauge if, you know, it says you're at rock bottom, but oftentimes as well, the day after I get a 4, I'll be at rock bottom if I wasn't before. And like when I'm in a flare, I notice that very significantly. Like if I'm getting 3s and 4s sort of every day for a good amount of time, and I'm not having like a flare up, I've just got the regular kind of fatigue that you get and that you get used to, and I've got some pain and stuff, fair enough, but like I feel like, you know, that is probably my base level. But when I am faced with getting, you know, 1s and 2s, and then I randomly get a 4 or a 3, but I'm still not feeling my best in the middle of a flare up, I will know that that's like, maybe it's my body sort of like, it's sort of getting me there. But I cannot allow myself to be like, oh, okay, well, I'm fine then. Doing this course has really supported me with managing my symptoms. I'm only 2 weeks in, and I mean, really actually not managing my symptoms at all, because I'm not, because since getting this cold from Rosalie, I'm just back to in the middle of a flare up. So it's making me think, and it's definitely, I am putting things in place. So it talks about the 4 Ds, which is do it differently, so change it, so altering what you need, delaying it, does it need to be done now, delegating it, or just ditching it, does it actually need to be done at all? And so this is something that I have to do for everything, but then also plan, pace, and prioritize. So things like when I'm getting ready, like when I'm doing my makeup, I'll now make sure I'm sitting rather than stood up to conserve my energy, because it's really important. And, you know, I think that these are lessons that everyone can take and implement into their life to help them with their daily lives, because I feel that there's just so much emphasis on pushing ourselves so hard in this culture, time and epoch, especially with things like AI and technology. You'd think that that would help us to slow down a bit because it's taking some tasks away from us, but actually oftentimes I think it just makes us want things faster, and productivity has to go up. I mean, it's at work as well, and think about the way that we're pushed at work. So I really think that prioritizing, you know, being able to schedule in rests. I do work. At the moment I'm freelancing and I work from home, so that's helpful. But I know there are some people who have full-time jobs in offices, and that is much harder. And obviously for that, the onus is on employers, like supporting employees with their diagnoses and with their health, and working with them and allowing them comfort breaks and things like that. But it's not ideal, I don't think. But then sleep is really just key. There's a lot more that I'm going to learn in this course, and a lot more that we're going to discuss. And I'm sure I'll have more thoughts about how that's impacting my practice. But really just, you know, there's not a massive takeaway other than that I have found by carving out little spaces of time, 10 minutes of breath work with a cup of tea in the garden or with the door open, or 10 minutes of closing my eyes with the dog, you know, 15 minutes of breath work first thing, and then, you know, in the afternoon maybe my 40-minute or 30-minute yoga nidra. By putting these in place, it's like the intuitive hits, the messages are flowing in an even easier way than before. It's ironic really that it takes being ill to actually implement those strategies and to actually feel the benefit of those strategies, that it's not even related to feeling better within an illness. It is actually, you know, related to something mystical, and that's quite cool. And so there is magic in your chronic illness, and there's magic to be found within every pocket and area of your life. And I think sometimes it's just about rethinking your options, rethinking your position, and rethinking your angle and strategy, like how you're coming at things. Because for me, a lot of things have had to change a lot in the last few years, a lot, and they're still changing. So those are just a few thoughts that I've had about cultivating self-love and self-care with chronic illnesses and disabilities and mental health conditions for Spoonie witches and magical practitioners who do suffer. I hope that in some way it helps, whether or not you suffer with a chronic illness. You know, I think many people suffer with mental health conditions, and I think that these messages can apply very, very well to many people, even those without. So I hope that this message serves you well in some way, and that you can find some moments of stillness in your life to bring you back to center and to bring you back to rest and to a state of recovery if you need it, or to a state of peace and calm and contentment. Yeah, that would be my wish for you watching this. I'm planning to have my pumpkin tea and take my makeup off and probably do a yoga nidra session, and then maybe read my book, and then that's really it. Yeah, I feel like I need to close my eyes now, actually, after this. So I really appreciate you being here with me. I appreciate all of the kind messages, and I'm sending lots of prayers to you all and blessings for the equinox, and by the time you see this it'll probably already be past, long past. But enjoy the autumn season while it's here. It's very beautiful and enjoyable. If you'd like to support me in any way, there are links below to social media, Instagram, there's Patreon and buy me a coffee and things like that. Also, if you do like the video, please like, share, subscribe, comment. I'd love to hear from you if you have anything to share about yourself and your condition. If you do have a chronic illness or you're a Spoonie witch in some way, I'd love to hear, and any strategies, any practices that you do that support you. Also, if you've already liked, shared and subscribed, then you feel like hyping this video, that will help with the algorithm god's favour. All that to say, I really hope that you stay well and safe, and I look forward to seeing you again in another video. Take care, many blessings. Bye.